Shalom, Haverim. Today I want to talk to you about the question I get from time to time in various forms from people. Why should a believer in Yeshua as the Messiah study the Talmud? Before we get going, I want to remind everybody to please donate to support this work. For those that don't know, my wife is chronically ill. She suffers chronic pain. She is disabled, and I am her caretaker. You're also supporting this work, which we are doing through these videos, blogs, online teachings, etc. Most of which are freely available because they are funded. The work is funded by people like you. So please consider donating. I especially need people to donate today. Today is the 1st. Our rent is due. So we absolutely don't want to fall behind on our rent payments. And so we definitely need people to step up and help us out. Okay. Also want to ask people to please like our videos, subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell so that you'll get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think in the comments section, especially since some of the things we talk about are thought-provoking, and participate in the discussions that are taking place in the comments section. If somebody says something in the comments you want to respond to, please do. All these things stimulate the YouTube algorithm to recommend our video to new viewers, and we want to get recommended to new viewers. And then another thing I want to ask you to do is please share these videos on social media with your friends and with your Facebook friends, in relevant Facebook groups, in X, formerly known as Twitter, wherever you participate in social media. Also email them to your friends. Before I forget, I asked you to donate. Let me tell you how. It'd be helpful to know how, wouldn't it? So you can donate by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org, or you can click on the donate link in the video description, because from that donate link you could donate either by PayPal, by Zelle, or by GoFundMe. So we definitely need you to step up to the plate, and don't expect somebody else to do it for you. You be the person that helps make this work possible. So why study Talmud? Now, people will ask me, do you keep Talmud, or do you believe in the Talmud, or do you do you keep the Talmud? Well, the answer is that the Talmud is not really kept. The Talmud is studied. And a person who asks that question usually doesn't really understand fully what the Talmud is. So let me explain what I mean when I say that the Talmud is not accepted, it is studied. We study the Talmud. The Talmud presents discussions about issues about how to keep Torah. And it presents the majority and the minority views. And it explores not only the majority views, but the minority views to their fullest logic, follows the logic of the minority view, and tells you the different sages that were expressing this minority view and what logic and what arguments they were presenting, and it follows their logic and the nuances of the minority view. That and it doesn't necessarily reveal to you what the majority view is until after it's done this. So sometimes it'll go on for pages discussing all the ramifications and the nuances of a particular interpretation of the Torah and a particular halachic view of how we observe the Torah according to that understanding, only to ultimately say that that's not the majority view and present the majority view and to explore that also. But the beauty of it is, because the Talmud is written in this manner and expresses the minority views, preserves the minority views, preserves their arguments and their ramifications, we can study the Talmud without having to accept the Talmud as such. Aidan Steinsaltz put this very, very well in his book, The Essential Talmud, which is a really good starter book from it's a rabbinic book, but it's a starter book in what I call the Talmud toolkit. If you're really interested in studying Talmud, it's a really good starter book. And on page 8 of that book, Aidan Steinsaltz, who, by the way, he passed away fairly recently, but he was, until his passing, possibly the foremost Talmud scholar in the world. He produced the notes for the Koran edition of the Talmud, and at one point in time, he served as the Nasi of the modern rabbinic Sanhedrin in Israel. So Aidan Steinsaltz said, voicing doubts is not only legitimate in the Talmud, it is essential to study. To a certain degree, the rule is that any type of query is permissible as unfair or incorrect as long as it pertains to the issue that can cast light on some aspect of it. This is true not only of the Talmud itself, but also of the way in which it is studied and pursued. After absorbing the basic material, the student is expected to pose questions to himself and to others, and to voice doubts and reservations. From this point of view, the Talmud is perhaps the only sacred book in all the world culture that permits and even encourages the student to question it. So, as I said, we don't simply accept the Talmud, we study it. And from the perspective of a Jewish believer in Yeshua as the Messiah, the Talmud is very, very helpful, not only as a tool in studying the Torah. See, when you're studying Talmud, you're studying Torah. And you're studying Torah because you're looking at the different views of how different mitzvot, commandments in the Torah, are to be carried out, and what all of the arguments back and forth were as being presented particularly from the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, and from later schools, debating over these ramifications and these nuances. And I'm going to look at just one example here today that will help you understand why the beauty of the fact that the Talmud preserves the minority views helps us as Jewish believers in Yeshua as the Messiah to understand Torah, to even understand Yeshua's teachings, and not only to better understand them, be better prepared to defend them, and to understand further ramifications of Torah understanding and how we observe Torah, that we can learn even from that beyond what Yeshua directly taught us. So we're going to look at just one passage in the Mishnah, and that has a strong parallel in something that Yeshua taught. Okay, so there was a famous debate between Hillel and Shammai, one of many, many debates between Hillel and Shammai, over what constituted cause for a divorce. And this is recorded in the Mishnah in Gittin 9:10. And the Mishnah here says, the house of Shammai says, a man should divorce his wife only because he has found grounds for it in unchastity. Since it is said, because he has found in her an unclean matter in anything. This is quoting from Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. And the house of Hillel says, even if she spoiled his dish, since it is said, because he has found in her an unclean matter in anything. Rabbi Akiva says, even if he found someone else prettier than she, since it is said, and it shall be if she find no favor in his eyes. All right, so this is two different views, and then a third later view presented by Akiva. We're not going to really talk about Akiva's rather absurd view in this matter. We're going to talk today about Hillel and Shammai, because Hillel and Shammai actually lived before the time of Yeshua. Well, actually, during the time of Yeshua's childhood, and before and during his childhood. And these debates, the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, existed in the time of Yeshua, and these debates were ongoing and fluid during that time. The halacha related to them was still fluid, and you had those that subscribed to the school of Hillel that kept one, those that subscribed to the school of Shammai that kept the other, and of course you had other lesser known smaller schools of Pharisaic Judaism, and then you had Essene Judaism and Sadducean Judaism, etc. Okay, so here Yeshua agrees with the school of Shammai. That's unusual because the lenient school, it is said that Hillel taught the spirit of the law, but Shammai taught the letter of the law. Okay, so Yeshua's position was most often in keeping with that of the school of Hillel and the philosophy of the school of Hillel. But in this particular instance, Yeshua followed or agreed with, more correct, he agreed with the teaching of the school of Hillel on this issue. And we see that in Matthew chapter 19, verse 19, among other places where we learn that Yeshua says that this must be a case of fornication for a divorce, and the word that is used in the Hebrew version of Matthew, Dutele and Minster, is zenot. I may do another teaching about this in the future because there's a lot of ramifications of that. And there's also things about Yeshua's teaching on this issue in chapter 19 of Matthew that have a very strong parallel in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But we're not talking about that today. We're just talking about this debate between Hillel and Shammai that is preserved in the Talmud. Okay, now there is Gemara to this Mishnah. The Talmud is made up of two parts, the Mishnah and the Gemara. The Mishnah is the early part of the Talmud that was codified around 250 CE, and the Gemara to the Babylonian Talmud, which is, there were two Talmuds, the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud was about 100 years later than the Jerusalem Talmud, and its writers were aware of and often cited material from the Jerusalem Talmud, so it's considered more authoritative because it's a later, more complete writing. So in the Gemara to this particular portion of Mishnah, it is explored. Well, let's talk about this. This is actually a whole debate about Matthew chapter 24, verse 1. Verses 1 and 2 really, but verse 1. When a man has taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he has found some, and the King James Version has uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house. Verse 2, and when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife, etc. And it goes on from there into some more details of the regulation. But the key point here is the word or phrase, actually, that the King James Version translates uncleanness. And the Hebrew word here is ervat davar. Ervat is a word that means uncleanness, not ritual uncleanness directly, nakedness, unseemliness. Okay, unseemliness, obnoxiousness. These are different meanings. It's an ambiguous word, but it also literally, primary meaning is nakedness. Okay, and because of this, there was this dispute between Hillel and Shammai over whether it had to be an issue of sexual immorality, a matter of nakedness, if you will, or if it could be anything that she find that's obnoxious. Okay, and so this was the dispute between Hillel and Shammai. And Yeshua, of course, agreed with Shammai on this, saying it had to be a matter of zenot, fornication. Now, it's important to know that there is nothing in the Torah by mistake. There is nothing superfluous in the Torah. There's nothing unnecessary in the Torah. So every word in the Torah is there for a reason. Every letter in the Torah is there for a reason. Elohim didn't put anything in the Torah for no reason at all. Every element, every word means something, teaches us something, is there for a reason. None of it is there for no reason at all. And so this created this dispute between Hillel and Shammai, because each of them finds in this phrase, ervat davar, an operative word. Shammai finds the operative word to be ervat, and Hillel finds the operative word to be davar. And so we have the dispute. And in the Gemara to this passage of Mishnah, we are told that the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai challenged each other over the inoperative word. In other words, Hillel's school challenged the school of Shammai. Hillel's school says to Shammai's school, why is the word davar there? Why wouldn't it just say ervat? You just say nakedness. Why does it have to say davar if you're right? And Shammai likewise challenged Hillel and said, why is the word ervat there? If you're right, why didn't it just say davar and nothing more? So Shammai says, look, Hillel, if you're right, the word ervat is unnecessary. It could have just said davar. And Hillel says to Shammai, if you're right, the word davar doesn't need to be there. It could just say ervat. And so I'm not going, because of time, the element of time, we don't have time to fully explore the Gemara to this passage, which goes into much more anyway. But in the Gemara, we get Hillel's answer to the school of Shammai, but we also get the school of Shammai's answer to the school of Hillel, even though in Rabbinic Judaism, Shammai's opinion is wrong. Well, I won't say it's wrong. From a rabbinic standpoint, Shammai's view is for the world to come, not this world. But the halacha that is accepted in Rabbinic Judaism is that of the school of Hillel on this issue, not the school of Shammai. But fortunately for us, as I mentioned, the Talmud preserves the minority argument, not just the minority position, but the minority argument, and even the minority argument in response to the majority's argument and counter-argument back, so that it fully explores our view, which in this case is Shammai's view, which, as I said, is unusual that Yeshua is agreeing with Shammai, but in this case, Yeshua does agree with Shammai. And because of this, we have some very important information that we as believers in Yeshua can derive from this Mishnah and from this Gemara. That information is that as a believer in Yeshua and holding to Yeshua's position that this must be zenot, fornication, a rabbinic Jew might ask us fairly, why does the word devar there then? If we're right, and it must be a matter of zenot, of fornication, why isn't the word there ervat only without the word devar? Because the word devar would seem to add nothing to the issue. You could simply say, if Yeshua's position is correct, the same position as Shammai on this, if Yeshua's position is correct, then why doesn't Deuteronomy 24:1 just say ervat, not ervat devar? And most believers in Yeshua as the Messiah, in Messianic Judaism, certainly in Christianity, definitely in Rabbinic Judaism, would have to shrug their shoulders and say, heck if I know. But fortunately for us, we have preserved for us Shammai's answer, and it's a very astute answer. And it's an answer that we need to have, because if we're going to hold Yeshua's view, and we do, then we need to know, why is the word devar there? And I've seen no Messianic source or any other source really explain why the word devar is there, or even explore the question of why the word devar is there. But it's a fair question, and it's a question that in the long term, in reasonable debates that could and should happen between Nazarene Judaism and Rabbinic Judaism, we would be asked. So what is Shammai's very astute answer? Well, it's here in the Gemara on page 90a of the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Gittin. This is the Gemara to Mishnah 9:10 in Gittin. And the answer that Shammai gives is, here we find reference to thing, and elsewhere we find reference to the same matter, thus establishing an allegory based on verbal congruence. That's actually in that statement, thus establishing an allegory based on verbal congruence, is an editorial comment by Jacob Neusner, who's the translator of this version that I'm quoting from. Namely, by the mouth of two witnesses, or by the mouth of three witnesses, shall a thing be established, Deuteronomy 19:15, yielding this proposition, just as in that case two witnesses are required, so here also, or here too, two witnesses are required to establish the facts of the matter. In other words, Shammai's answer is that the word devar appears in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1, to point us to Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, where we learn that a devar, a matter, a thing, is established by the testimony of two or more witnesses. So now we have a response, an answer. An answer we wouldn't have if we weren't studying the Mishnah and the Gemara. An answer we wouldn't have if we weren't studying the Talmud to the question of why the word devar is there if Yeshua's position is correct. And we believe Yeshua's position is correct, so now we do have an answer. But we have the answer because we studied Talmud, and because it was preserved in the minority position, was preserved in the Talmud. So an example of how the Talmud is studied, not accepted. And we have not only our answer, but we learn something new. We learn that for a matter of divorce, as Yeshua says, must be a matter of fornication. But if it must be a matter of fornication, as Yeshua says, then we must understand why the word devar is there, and then we understand that the word devar is there because a matter is established by the testimony of witnesses, according to Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse, was it 25? Is that correct? 15, verse 15. Deuteronomy 19:15. So then this teaches us as believers in Yeshua as the Messiah that not only is a divorce, the writing of a get, the issuing of a get, only permissible in a matter of zenot, okay? Now we can explore what zenot means another time in great detail, but a matter of zenot. But because it's a matter of zenot, that it is teaching us that there must also be witnesses, and that therefore the get is not something, these witnesses in Deuteronomy chapter 19 verse 15, these witnesses are brought before and testify to the Beit Din, so the judges that shall be in those days, if we go look in Deuteronomy chapter 19, which teaches us then that this issuing of a get is not something that we do unilaterally for an issue of fornication, but which involves the Beit Din and the testimony of witnesses. Now that's a great departure from Rabbinic Judaism, and it, by the way, resolves a major problem in Rabbinic Judaism of, well, I won't even get into that right now. I don't want to divert too far into other subjects. But it teaches us, first of all, the answer. It gives us and supplies us with the answer as to why the word devar is there, a question that is already in the challenge of Hillel, in the school of Hillel, and modern Rabbinic Judaism, which accepts the position of Hillel. It is a challenge to the teaching of Shammai, which is the same as the teaching of Yeshua on this issue. So it's a challenge, an ancient challenge, already issued to us. What is the word devar? Why is it there? And that we have the answer by studying the Mishnah and the Gemara. We have the answer. And we can better understand Yeshua's halacha because we can better understand Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. And we learn a new thing. We also learn that such a issuing of a get for reason of fornication also involves witnesses, and those witnesses testify before a Beit Din. All right, so this is just one example, one of many examples of what we can learn and why we as believers in Yeshua as the Messiah should and need to be studying the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Talmud, as well as, of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls and a great many other things. And I am teaching a Talmud class. You can email me at cleartruth@yahoo.com if you want to get involved in the Talmud class that I am teaching and the yeshiva that we are working to build. So if you want to learn more about the efforts to create a Nazarene yeshiva and or take the Talmud online Talmud class, email me at cleartruth@yahoo.com and we'll correspond on that. I'd be glad to correspond with you on that. Please also donate to support this work. We have the dream of building a Nazarene yeshiva, but that also will take funding. We don't get funding from the Israeli government to do this like the yeshivot in Israel. And so we need your help to do that. So please donate, donate, donate. As I said, our rent is also due today. So we need your help today particularly. All right. Please click on the donate link in the video description and donate. Like the video. Click the subscribe. Click the notification bell to get notified when new videos come out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Participate in the discussions in the comments, and share these videos with your friends on social media. Until next time, everybody, shalom.